Hi, welcome to Sarah Mack Stacks. It's been a little, uh, about a minute since I've done one of these recordings, but I wanted to get back to it. I did some moving of my own books to a different part of the house, and then I had to take some time to move my grandmother's books, and I wanted to not only move them with great care, but I actually got a chance to um, catalog all of them and use an app. Most of my students know me for all the various apps I have on my phone, and so I have a book app where I've scanned in all the titles of all of her books. And I wanted to take time to do that because I just had an inkling that there would be some revelation or additional revelations. And so I definitely would look forward to sharing those, what the process of not just these individual books is like to share with others, but the library, her library of the books that I have here with me. So today I am selecting Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. And this is going to be an emotional book for me. And but I feel like I want to talk about it because unlike some of the other books where my grandmother may have captured some notes throughout or on different pages in the book, she just has one note in the front of the book in her handwriting. And I'm going to share that towards the end. But I just wanted to hold up my own copy, or at least one of my copies of this book. This is my first copy of Their Eyes Are Watching God. And so this is the exact same edition. It's actually a little later edition. My grandmother has this edition that's published in 1978. It has the foreword by Sherley Anne Williams. And Sherley Anne Williams, just a connection, she is the author of Dessa Rose, among some other titles. But this is one of the books that I read for my dissertation because I talk about novels where Black people in the United States are talking about freedom and what that means for them. And for many of them, it meant moving west and the frontier and not going up to northern cities. And so Sherley Anne Williams' novel, Dessa Rose, is one of those novels that they don't map out a destination, but at the end of that novel, they're moving out west and they're moving out towards freedom. And so Williams is the person who does the foreword in the 1978 edition. Well, when I go off to Johnson C. Smith in 1986, actually, I go off in 1986, 1987, the 50th anniversary edition comes out with the same foreword from Sherley Anne Williams, but the only difference between these books is just this little tag that lets you know that this is the 50th anniversary of Zora Neale Hurston's work being published. So the original novel came out in 1937, and then I was reading it in 1987 as an undergraduate at Johnson C. Smith. Now, I'm going to just put my grandmother's notes to the side for a second because I want to just say something about the fact that we both have the same cover, book looks the same. And this book was the first book that I read where I knew that the author was a Black person. I read poems by Langston Hughes, and I remember that being significant when I was in high school, because I memorized, I too sing America. I'm the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. So I knew that I should memorize this poem because I hadn't heard anything like that. Going to school, growing up in Philadelphia. But I have Langston Hughes's poems in my head. Well, when I get to Johnson C. Smith and I take this course in images of African-American women taught by Dr. Rosalind Jones, and I get this book. And then I realized that I had been reading a lot of science fiction and Stephen King in high school. I never read a complete book authored by a Black person. And I remember writing in my journal in my dorm room that I didn't know if I shed some tears when I was reading this book, and I didn't know if I was crying for the characters or if I was crying for myself, that it had taken that long for me to find Black authors. And so this is an emotional book for me. I can feel some tears welling up even now. And to think that this was a book that was in my grandmother's collection. I'm gonna power through and share just a few things that, because I have lots of notes. You can see I haven't even removed these tabs from, I know this wasn't the first reading, but just many, many readings. And I see different things in this text every time I pick it up. I want to give some credit to Kevin Quashie. I remember he talked about this book in his book of criticism, and he talked about the theory of the girlfriend in terms of Black women. And I think I'd read this as a love story, certainly about the self-actualization that we always talk about, that Alice Walker taps into with her character, Janie. But somehow I missed this dear relationship between these two women, Janie and her friend Phoebe. And so I think I want to just kind of say a little bit about that relationship and just about Janie overall. There's this way that I quote from this book all the time. And so I think I'm going to start there in the very beginning, where the people in Eatonville see Janie return to town. Now, she left with her new young lover, and the people that are around the store, they have lots of things to say and speculation about how she's come back by herself after she ran off with that young man, TK. And one of the things I quote all the time is where Janie says to her friends, she goes past all of the people in the town and she goes to her house and she sits down, and Janie comes to find out what happened. And Phoebe comes to find out what happened, and Janie says, "I don't mean to bother with telling them nothing, Phoebe. It ain't worth the trouble. You can tell them what I say if you wants to. That's just the same as me, 'cause my tongue is in my friend's mouth." And I say that all the time, you know, in these appropriate moments, like the people that I trust with vital information or the most intimate details of who I am, then whatever they choose to share, then, you know, my tongue is in my friend's mouth, because I will not have to go back and fix any details. Like, you have the story and I trust you. I trust you to tell whatever you want to tell. I trust you to get it right. And that kind of intimacy is something that is really, it bookends the book, right? So she's starting with this relationship with her friend. Like, I'm going to tell you what's going on. And when I tell you, like, this is the story. And if they hear it from you, it's as if they've heard it from me. And as she's explaining to Phoebe some of the things that's happened, Phoebe says, okay, hold on. Like, you losing me. It's hard for me to understand what you mean, where you're telling it. And, sometimes, just I'm hard to hear and hard to understanding sometimes. And she says, no, it's nothing like you think. So there's no use in me telling you something unless I'm going to give you the understanding to go along with it. And so with that, she launches into the telling of her story with Phoebe. She says they've been kissing friends for 20 years. They've been girlfriends that long. And Janie has put her feet into a pan of water just to get some of the dust off, and her feet are weary. And then we get the story of what happens from her growing up all the way through to when she leaves Eatonville with her third love, and the love of her life, TK. And then when we get to the back of the book, then we see the book end, because it says Janie stirred her strong feet in the pan of water, right? This is the end of the frame. And the tiredness is gone, and she dried her feet off with a towel. And she says, now that's how everything was, Phoebe. It's just like I told you. And I'm going back home, and I'm back home again, and I'm satisfied to be here. And she talks about this metaphor of the horizon, and how she's back and she can set up in her life, and she's experienced the world, and so she can live by comparisons. Here's another one of my favorite quotes I say all the time when she is giving her the story. Phoebe says, I done grow 10 feet higher just from listening to you, Janie. And I ain't satisfied with myself no more. I means to make Sam take me fishing with him after this, and nobody better ever criticize you in my hearing. And Janie says, look, don't look down on the townspeople too bad. But I'm going to read this little passage because it's so, it's about community, and it's about love, and it's about these two girlfriends sitting on the porch and talking about life. And she says, now, Phoebe, don't feel too mean with the rest of them, because they parched up from not knowing things. Them meat skins has got to rattle to make out their lives. Let them consolate themselves with their talk. Of course, talking don't amount to a hill of beans when they can't do nothing else. And listening to that kind of talk is just like opening up your mouth and letting the moon shine down your throat. It's a known fact, Phoebe. You got to go there to know there. So even with that, she's like, I've experienced life, and I don't have any harsh words for those people. But she's saying, there are some things that you just have to experience for yourself. And this is where we get this kind of self-actualization, this contentment that she has with herself and her life, and all of the quests that she was on as a young person kind of come to an end. And she's dispensing this wisdom that she's learned from being in the world. And then on the final page, it says that the day of the gun and the bloody body and the courthouse came and commenced to sing a sobbing sigh out of every corner in the room, out of each and every chair and thing, commenced to sing, commenced to sob and sigh, singing and sobbing. Then TK came prancing around her where she was, and the song of the sigh flew out of the window and lit in the top of the pine trees. TK with the sun for a shawl. Of course he wasn't dead. He could never be dead until she herself had finished thinking and feeling. The kiss of his memory made pictures of love and light against the wall. Here was peace. She pulled in her horizon like a great fishnet, pulled it from around the waist of the world and draped it over her shoulders. So much of life in its meshes. She called in her soul to come and see. So that's the end of the book, and I'm gonna take it to where my grandmother has written her notes, and she says, unforgettable love story about Blacks, for Blacks. And she says that it's told with great dignity. Unforgettable characters, yet so familiar. And I think I would just say I agree. I agree with what my grandmother wrote, and I love that Zora left us this novel. And I even have a copy of Barracoon here, which is the just the anthropological work that she left us with, and left us with it intact in a way where she is telling the story of Kossola and what it was like to be one of the last Africans brought into the United States after the so-called ending of the slave trade, and what his life was like as he first tries to get back to Africa, which was home for him, and then tries to construct Africa where he is because he can't get home. So I think with that, I'll just say that if you haven't read anything by Zora Neale Hurston, I would recommend that you do so. And certainly The Eyes Are Watching God is a huge favorite of mine. I also love Moses, Man of the Mountain. And I think Barracoon is probably my most recent favorite. I've taught it probably for the last 2 or so years since it was released. And I just want to be thankful for Rosalind Jones for signing this book when I was at Johnson C. Smith, for Sarah Mack, my grandmother, for providing these continuous glosses in her collection of books, and thankful for you all for letting me share these texts and these conversations that I'm having with her, for allowing me to share them with you. Thank you.